In the sun-drenched city of Zola, where the air smells of roasting maize and the streets are a sea of colorful fabrics, lived an orphan named Amani. Amani's life was lived in the shadows of a small, dusty house. Her uncle Jomo was a man who believed that dreams were for people with full pockets and his pockets were always empty. He was a stern man who kept Amani busy from sunrise to sunset with heavy chores. One evening, after the sun had dipped below the Zola skyline, Uncle Jomo sat at the table counting his spare change. Amani stood nearby, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had been practicing the words for weeks. "Uncle," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The clinic in town. They are looking for student volunteers. If I work extra hard in the mornings, could I?" Jomo stopped counting. The room went deathly silent. "Could you what?" "I want to study, Uncle. I want to become a nurse. I want to help our people." Jomo threw his head back and laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was cold. "Nursing?" he barked, slamming his hand on the table. "You think because you can sweep a floor, you can heal a body? Look at you. You have no money, no father, and no future beyond these walls." He stood up, towering over her. "You are an orphan, Amani. You will stay here and serve this house until I say otherwise. Don't let me hear that word again." Uncle Jomo's words hung in the air like heavy smoke. Amani didn't argue. She knew that in this house, silence was her only shield. She lowered her head and went back to the kitchen, the taste of bitterness in her mouth. But that night, while the rest of Zola slept and the only sound was the distant hum of a night owl, Amani didn't sleep. She sat on her thin mat and pulled out a small, jagged piece of charcoal she had saved from the cooking fire. On the back of an old flour sack, she began to draw. She drew the human heart as she remembered it from the clinic posters. She whispered the medical terms under her breath, so quiet that not even the mice in the walls could hear her. "I will be a nurse," she breathed into the darkness. "With or without your blessing, Uncle." From that day on, Amani lived two lives. By day, she was the obedient orphan, scrubbing floors until her hands were raw. But by night, she was a student of the healing arts, turning her uncle's cruelty into the fuel that kept her fire burning. Months passed, and the secret drawings on flour sacks grew into a mountain of hidden knowledge. Then, one humid afternoon, a scream shattered the peace of the neighborhood. A neighbor's young son had fallen from a mango tree, and a sharp branch had sliced deep into his leg. A crowd gathered, but they were paralyzed by fear. Even Uncle Jomo stood back, his hands shaking. "He's losing too much blood," someone cried. While everyone else panicked, Amani's mind went clear. She saw the diagram she had drawn in the dirt. She remembered the words from the stolen posters. "Apply pressure, elevate, clean." Ignoring her uncle's stunned expression, Amani rushed forward. She tore a strip of clean cloth from her own apron. "Move aside," she commanded, her voice no longer a whisper but the firm voice of a leader. With steady hands, she tied a tourniquet and pressed down on the wound. The boy's mother sobbed, but Amani stayed focused, her eyes calm as she worked to stop the flow of blood. For the first time, the people of Zola didn't see an orphan girl, they saw a healer. And in the background, Uncle Jomo watched, his mouth open in silence. For the first time, he realized that the trash he tried to burn had become a power he could no longer control. "She's going nowhere," Uncle Jomo snapped, stepping forward. He didn't look proud. He looked threatened. He saw that if Amani became a nurse, he would lose his servant forever. "She has chores. She has a life here." He lied to the neighbors, his eyes narrow and full of malice. "The girl just got lucky with a bandage. She isn't a healer. She's an orphan who belongs in my kitchen." That night, Jomo did the unthinkable. To ensure Amani could never leave, he took her only pair of shoes and locked them away. He piled even more work on her, making her carry heavy water jugs from the well until her back ached. He wanted to break her spirit so she would be under his thumb for life. But while Jomo was busy building a cage, the boy's parents were already making a plan to help Amani escape his shadow. Amani was smart. She knew that to truly escape, she needed her school certificates. For the next few years, she played the role of the obedient niece by day, but she studied like a lioness by night. Even as Uncle Jomo mocked her and tried to block her path, she finished her secondary education with top marks, hiding her results under her sleeping mat. The day finally came. Jomo had gone to the local joint and, as usual, drank until he couldn't stand. While he was passed out, Amani met the woman whose son she had saved. "Everything is ready," the woman whispered. They drove through the night, leaving the village behind. 5 years later, life had moved in two opposite directions. In the city, Amani was a star student at the School of Nursing. Dressed in her crisp white uniform and cap, she spent her days in bright classrooms and modern hospitals. She was no longer the scared orphan. She was a professional, respected and brilliant. Back in the village, Uncle Jomo had become a shadow of a man. Without Amani to cook for him or clean his mess, his house fell into ruin. He spent his days at the bottom of a bottle. The villagers often saw him stumbling, eventually falling into the very gutters he used to walk past with pride. He had tried to hold Amani down to keep himself up, but in the end, he lost everything. Years later, a medical outreach bus arrived in the village of Zola. A team of city doctors and nurses stepped out, bringing medicine and hope to the poor community. Among them was Amani, now a lead nurse, her presence commanding respect from everyone who saw her. As she treated the long line of patients, a group of villagers carried a man toward her on a tattered mat. He was thin, covered in dirt, and coughing violently. It was Uncle Jomo. He didn't recognize the successful woman in front of him at first. He just groaned in pain, reaching out a shaky hand. Amani paused, her heart heavy as she looked at the man who had tried to steal her future. For a moment, the village was silent. She didn't turn him away. Instead, she knelt in the dust, just like she had for the little boy years ago. She cleaned his face and checked his pulse with steady, professional hands. "Amani," he whispered, his eyes widening as he finally realized who she was. He looked at her crisp uniform, then at his own filthy clothes, and he wept not just from pain, but from the shame of how he had treated her. "I am a healer now, Uncle," Amani said softly, her voice filled with peace. "And a healer treats everyone, even those who tried to break them." She had won, not by seeking revenge, but by becoming exactly what he said she never could be. Amani didn't hesitate. She helped him up and took him straight to the city in her medical van. At her clinic, she ran every test, making sure he was treated with the best medicine. As she adjusted his clean, new clothes in the bright hospital room, Jomo began to weep. "Amani, please, forgive me for the way I treated you," he begged with heavy tears. Amani looked at him with nothing but love and replied, "Uncle, don't worry. I have forgiven you since. I didn't stay back to hold a grudge. I moved forward to build a life." From that day on, Jomo left the village behind. They lived together in the city, a family restored by a heart that refused to hate. Forgiveness is true strength. Amani showed that being able to forgive someone who hurt you is the greatest power a human can have. The table always turns. The person you maltreat today might be the only one standing between you and the grave tomorrow.